is a damp environment, that misty morning kind of a quality. And so there'll be a sheen on the roofs, a layer of dew. And we're just playing around some different blues, a little bit more of an ultramarine, which is a little bit of a purple blue, and a cyan, which is a slightly greener blue. So there's just a little variation in there. Okay, the whole thing about the warmth from the distance then. I'm saying that there's going to be some sunlight coming down through here and disappearing into the nest. So the times when the atmosphere in the far distance is very warm is when sunlight is shining directly through it. So in that case, it's not the blue skylight or gray skylight bouncing around through the atmosphere, creating that distant heat effect. In that case, it's the direct sunlight hitting and bouncing around in there, which has a much warmer color, of course. Let's go to a beautiful gold and just go down that again. That's all we need, so that people know there's a little something. Let's go back to those pools again. Okay, so the light on the back of the elephant is going to be a cool light. Be a little bit more cyan. Let's go to purplish feeling. Okay, so elephant, yeah, they're gray, but it's a bit of a warm gray. It has a hint of warmth to it. So the shadows are going to be warmer because of the local color of the elephant, but the light being cool, because that's, again, not direct sunlight, it's ambient, cloudy daylight. And so the lightest parts are going to be cooler, and that's what I'm getting here. Okay, and then these roofs, same thing. So the lightest part of it is an influence of the cool light. So leaving the warms and the halftones and shadows, but the light source in the highlights. And see, I have to be very careful because it wants to really grab on the middle grays here, but it's really tough to get it to grab in the light part. That's where I made that value adjustment. So I'm being careful. I got to take a step back in the history here. So I got to be careful to push into the lighter part and not to push there, because that's not how light works. It's how the digital tool works, but not how light works. It's so easy. The digital tools are amazing. I'm in favor of them. Use them. Use all of them. But use them tempered by a little bit of knowledge here. But I'm going to reflect some of that warmth down in there. So let me get some cooling of water down here. There's a little reflection there. That cool quality in it. Okay, again, the light is cool, so I'm going to push these lightest bits. I'm going to put a little bit of a cooler green in there. But see how it's already emerging? And I'll say it again. This is not a deep color approach. It's a minimal approach for presentation purposes. So we're actually almost done. I mean, that's all there is to it. A little bit of logic behind it, and a little bit of color tinting. And with that, we're done.
Orang
So
lain
let's show
lagi.
that before and after.
No, no.
Orang lain mah gambar teh mikir ini gue
Asli. Orangnya kadang no-brain aja.
Hey everybody, I hope you're keeping well out there. And if you'll allow a little bit of optimism, maybe you're finding yourself with a little bit of drawing time at home. And I want to share a little idea here and a demonstration that I think can be incredibly helpful in taking on that challenge. So all you need is a mirror and a couple of simple drawing supplies. You can just do a self-portrait. It'd be great to draw a friend if you can, but a mirror is all that you need, and some simple supplies. You don't need all of this stuff, just a couple of charcoal pencils, a kneaded eraser, a sheet of good quality paper, and you are good to go. And if you'd like to take a look at specifically what my materials are, you can head over to my class page. If you don't mind going over to schoolism.com, instructors, you can tip me, and I offer many online classes here for the interactive critiqued version with me, and also very inexpensively for subscription. And so you can just go to drawing portraits in charcoal. Hey everybody, Nathan here. So I'm always talking about the bright and rosy side. It's a great business. It's great to be an artist. Those things are true, but we've got to be fair. And hey everybody, so we've been talking the rules of color relationships. And I promised you guys in the last talk that I'd follow it up with a little demonstration. So let's do that. And so to ease us back into that, let's review this most basic and simple of ideas, which can open up so much to us. So over here on the left, this is just brown on brown, not really interesting. But if you take that exact same brown and surround it by a color that has a little bit of contrast, all of a sudden that red turns into magic. And this is where rich, subtle color comes from. You can drastically improve your color, not by what colors you choose, but what you surround those colors with and place side by side. So I did this little digital landscape study with this related brown on brown on brown kind of an idea, but trying to pull something a little bit more interesting out of it. And by the way, if you'll allow a recommendation, I've just come out with my digital landscape image workout series. 30 days, 30 demonstrations, less than an hour each, and we supply you with the relevant references, and then you paint along with me scenes like these every day for 30 days to get your day off on a good start. So I hope you'll consider joining me for that, which comes from the fantastic platform schoolism.com. Now let's get right to it here. Let's start out with these steps for this image. So this is a quick gestural study, so to speak, of a landscape in the fall. So you see that I have some subtle varieties of color here. And to get those colors just right, who easy does it? Let me show you what I mean. So I just started out with a field of color, a little texture on it, and I'm going to be painting with a lot of texture and some transparency. And so this warmth will infuse into just about everything, and that'll help it harmonize. But remember, too much harmony, same, you have a bunch of mud. So let's go to the next step here. Okay, so I just started going forward here. Light blue sky, fall foliage colors. It's the outside leaves that tend to pick up more of the fall color more quickly. And so you see that there's a suggestion of some bushes, like for instance over here, we have the warmth on the outside. On the interior is still some green in there. And that's the logic of what was really happening in the shrub. And it gives some rich notes of color. At the same time, with this moonlight kind of filling into the background, you get some of these light edges along the edges. losing those shadows the further away that we get. And then we come down where this line of brush contacts the ground, so we get some of these darker darks here. So let's jump to the next step, because there was a really nice stream flowing through this location. And so it just indicated that, just zigzagged it towards us in perspective. It's reflecting that color of the sky. And the reflections were kind of special, visually interesting in the light pool temperature level. And so it was both true and very necessary in the sketch to get these darker tones around it so you can really feel the light of it. And those are banks where the plane of the earth kind of turned towards us so that it was catching less light. And so you can see those warms infusing through everything. At the same time, we have a wide variety of color. And by the way, if you're interested in what technique this happened to be, I'll show you that in a minute. This isn't a technique lecture, but let's get the principle out there, and I'll be happy to show you that. So here's the next step to bring in some light and push it further. And then let me go ahead. So here's the next step we're out there, and I'll be happy to show you that. So here's the next step to bring in some light and push it further. And then let me go ahead and show you the finish so that we can go over everything that's happening here. So there we go. You see the branches kind of sprinkling through there, peeking out from behind the bushes to give some depth and some visual interest. See the before and the after of that. There's some sunshine, a little bit of kind of backside lighting coming in that I've dropped in there. You can see the little hill here catching some light. That tree casting a shadow down the hill. A little bit of sunlight catching here and blended into the shrubbery. A little bit more reflection in the water. And then to pop the foreground, there are these little accents of tall grasses that frame against the light of the reflection. And so that gives some visual interest in the foreground that gives us a nice lead in into the picture and creates a little bit of depth. So it's that simple to build this up. But we are talking about subtle color relationships here, and that's what I think this image is built on. So let me just go to this to make that point. So for those of you who saw part one of this, you recognize where I'm going with this. But let me take and zoom in here. I'm just going to zoom way in, and there's a spot right here where I looked around and found a few pixels that have the strongest cool green feeling quality. Just right in here, nice and cool. And I selected that, and I brought it over here, and surrounded it by actual blue. Here we go. Target color. So let's select it, and there it is, just to show you that that is indeed the color. And that color that felt like such a cool green, well, here when we put it next to an actual cool green, it doesn't feel cool green at all. It feels like a brick red. And that's the subtlety of color relationships. Let's do it again. Let's go down here and let's take a look. And so I picked out the place that had the coolest feeling purple, kind of a blue purple that I could find. And so let me just select that and go over here to most of the blue purple pixel. And I'm just going to show you. There it is. Same thing. And in this context, by an actual blue purple, it doesn't feel blue purple at all. It feels, again, like an extremely warm color. So let's go to something that's even more blue, kind of a blue cyan over here. And, this one, it's not even surrounded by these red colors like some of the other ones were that have a strong influence. So if we just look at it right here, well, I mean, surely that's going to look somewhat blue when we do the same thing with it. Let me just select it there and just prove that it is in fact the color. There it is. Well, it actually feels like a warm gray when you put it next to an actual cyan blue. And so you see the potential problem here as you paint. The amateur will say, oh, okay, I need a cool green. And they'll dutifully reach for the green and the blue and mix up a cool green, and they might neutralize it a little bit. And then they won't understand why it doesn't look right in their painting. Because it's not a cool green. It's something a little bit different. And they'll want to mix up a cool. They'll see a blue in their environment. So they'll dutifully reach for their oil paints or whatever they're using and dutifully mix up a blue. And then they'll put it down and not understand why it looks so horrible. Because it's not really a blue. It only felt blue in this particular context. And again, same thing here. Okay, so that's why understanding the subtlety of color relationships is so critically important. Colors have a powerful relationship on each other when they're side by side. And whenever you put two colors that have any contrast from each other, the contrast will intensify. And that's the principle of simultaneous contrast of color. And we have to take that into account as we're painting and as we're designing color relationships. And that's how you can build up the rich colors of the picture. Okay, so for this, you're done. But I did promise to show the brushing technique here, so if you'd like to stick around, we can take a moment. So here's what's happening. I have a simple texture brush that I'll show you in a moment. But we've got this base color that we looked at, and I just want to top it up. And just thinking of the color. So for instance, just to recreate what's happening up above, just bring in some of this orange, come into some of these golden colors, layer those in, and then come all the way to the yellows and get those yellow highlights in there. Some of these gold a little more strongly. And then there were those greens that I was talking about, so we can grab some of that. And just ease some of those in. Easy does it. And then some of those blues. So we can just glaze some of the blues in there. And so it's just by a matter of the blues, and so we're getting these very subtle colors where, is it warm, is it cool? Well, this is definitely cool, and what's next to it is definitely warm in this context. And they're so subtle. This is really just a cool gray, and this is just really kind of a brown red. But side by side, they bring each other to life. And that was the breakthrough of the Impressionists, put these side by side colors that by themselves weren't anything special, but brought together they really vibrate. Okay, so the brush settings, I have shape dynamics on with size jitter set. I have some scattering turned on. Oh, and I missed angle jitter. Definitely have that going. And then I have pressure sensitivity turned on. So there's a little bit of a glazing effect. And then let's just fill this in. Go to black. Turn all of that off. And that's the shape. It's just a little piece of texture. So you're welcome to capture that as a brush if you want to. You can just frame capture this and grab it. And in fact, we might even come in and clean up some of the squared off edges to keep it looking nice and organic. Okay, so you're welcome to that. But this brush isn't special. There are a gazillion good texture brushes out there. It's how you use them that makes them magic. So as always, best wishes for your artwork.
Exciting. Now there is a WhatsApp which make me gonna fucking kill myself. No, thankfully. kulino hell yeah. Anjir nge-live ki.
Gak
Masuk ke meta FYP cok.
masuk si anjir. Kadangnya gerasa rana aja. Itu syaratin apa ya asup gulanya. Kadinya. Dikit tapi.
Oh delay.
Ada latensi sih.
Latensinya lumayan 10 detik kan.
Ya. Lila banget tuh.
Hey everybody, for this quick demo, let's take on a very challenging subject for these palms, because how do you sketch those in a reasonable period of time without, spending 2 or 3 hours copying every single detail? So let's do that. First, I want to let you know that I do have some other resources out there if you find this kind of thing helpful. You can find those at schoolism.com, but let's jump right into it, because what we've got to do is find this simple statement. So just going for little circles and fronds radiating out from the center, framing them with the darker tones and local color greens in the middle, and see how I'm setting this up with the light hitting the flatter part, and then the fronds radiating out from the center. The left hand one is catching a little bit more direct sunlight, the right hand one a little bit more cool skylight and some more shadow, and then just having a little bit of fun with the background there to make it an interesting picture, hopefully a little bit more than a study. But just trying to get these things to read, I'm thinking about getting them to have form. So the direction, the lighting, the light and shadow, the simple geometry of them. And so let's just push and pull with some dots and dashes. They're quite active. Lots of fronds going everywhere, catching little glints of light. And then the brightest highlight falls along the middle area of the bits that are in direct light. So I'm zeroing in on those, but it feels kind of stylistic rather than believable. So let's take a pass at a simpler statement here, just as a little practice there. I had that idea of a simpler statement, zeroing in on those, but it feels kind of stylistic rather than believable. So let's take a pass at a simpler statement here, just as a little practice there. I had that idea of a flatter area catching light and then the center radiating out. I'm just going to analyze that here for a second. And I think there's something to that. So I'm blending a little bit of that back into what I had previously. And what I'm realizing is I needed that cast shadow coming from the center area, and now it's a lot better. But it needs to go further. So I'm going to do another little quick analysis here. Let's treat this as spheres. How do the spherical shapes catch the light? And so quick little spheres with warm direct sunlight, a little bit of cool skylight. But then it's made up of a bunch of radiating fronds where at this angle we can see into the dark center. And so that's what I'm doing here, seeing through the texture of it with the dark center and the little bits catching light and shadow here and there, and a little bit of translucency, so getting some warm light in there, and I think that helped. So what that made me realize was that I need more fronds radiating out from the dead middle. And so I'm just dropping those in and getting a little bit of pushing and pulling here. Also some blending. Right now I know it's jumping around because we're speed demons, but I'm just kind of blending things around to simplify so it's not so busy. And so the shapes of light and shadow are a little bit more neat. So let's just radiate out a few more fronds. And with that, we've just about got it. Just a few more touches of simplification. And I want you to notice that look at the highlights in the light. Look at how the highlights follow a simple curve. You see that? That's part of what holds these together. Okay, so it took some on-the-fly analysis to figure this out. And what it came down to was simple light and shadow and simple geometry to do that. Hope that helps, and I'll see you next
Oh
time.
my god, what the fuck, bro? Really think about what he drew. I need a brain.
Boleh. Iya aja. Goblok. Kagak ada. Mencari. Ngacung itu. Merek beli nama.
Ini ceki,
Ciki.
ceki.
Ke. Hôm nay malah tiaw. Mana mana.
Dia itu orang bu.
Heeh.
Kiu. mesin. Sudah pisang kita.
Lanjut.
3 jam video.
Lanjut.
On to day 10. It's supposed to be a hot one with a strong headwind. In addition to the current working against me,